Shanti. Good evening and welcome everyone to Feel Well Meditation Lounge, where we have these meditation sessions and talks every week. And we have been having this for the past few months. So last week we changed a little bit of our registration that everybody had to register before coming into Zoom. But you only have to register once, although whenever you register, you get a link and you it's the same link that you sign in every week with the same link. If you have not saved that link, you can re-register. It takes only a few seconds. Either you could do that, or what you could do is you could save it in the Google Calendar. There's a space over there. You save it in the Google Calendar. I marked it as a start email. So whenever I go to my start emails, I have the same link and I could go back to it. So there are various choices, and we had to do it for cybersecurity as for Brahma Kumari. So it's just that link you have to click. And we are also live on Facebook, so you could go back to the sessions. And today we have a conversation between two Raj Yogis, and they are Dr. Kanishtha Agarwal and Dr. Shvetank Agarwal. Dr. Shvetank Agarwal has done a few sessions. He's a cardiac anesthesiologist and intensivist, and in Augusta, Georgia. And also he has done a few sessions. I think last month also he did it. And Dr. Kanishtha Agarwal was a pediatrician, has done in PhD in from California, and she is with us, and they're both going to interact. Let's hear what they have to say, and we'll have a short meditation at the end of the session, hopefully by Dr. Kala, who is the director of Peace Village, and Dr. Kala Younger, and I think we'll hear it from them, Dr. Kanishtha Agarwal and Dr. Shwetank Agarwal. Welcome.
Thank you, Dr. Neha. Today we are here to shed light on the topic of death. The word death sounds very depressing to many, especially during these unprecedented times that we are all in. And people usually they don't want to hear this word, but still that is what is in the air. So today we decided to talk on this topic of death. And to begin with, I would like to ask Dr. Shwetang. Actually, he's the one who chose this topic for today's conversation. So I would like to ask him why he's so much fascinated about this topic of death.
Yeah. So thank you again. Thank you, Dr. Neha, and thank you, Kanishta. I just want to say before I go on to talking about why I chose the topic, in general, talking about death can be, like you said, depressing. But my hope is that with today's conversation, we can kind of make this actually more pleasant a thought for all of us. And really, on the other hand, I also want to say that you had used the word unprecedented, and that word we're hearing it quite a few times. In a way, what we are facing right now is really not new. In a way, humanity has seen it time and again in different forms. Maybe not as coronavirus, it could be a different pathogen, or it could be genocides, it could be natural calamities. But we have seen, or humanity has seen death in so many different forms. And so the topic of death is relevant at any time. And I feel more so now, not because of the situation in the world with the coronavirus, but also because I feel that there is a shift happening in the world, shift in consciousness. You know, on one hand, there is a shift in the physical characteristics of life in general, but also there is a shift in consciousness happening. There is an awakening that is happening in humanity. And so I think it is important that we take such, in quote unquote, heavy topics, but kind of break it down to make it more simple and palatable and acceptable for everyone. So, coming back to your question, a rendezvous with death. Yeah, I I I am indeed very fascinated with this topic of death because I remember long back, and so I have been part of, and you together we came to Brahma Kumaris, and we started practicing the Raj Yoga meditation as taught by the Brahma Kumaris something like 20, 21 years back. But before that, I remember there was a time when I had begun to have an almost crippling kind of fear for death. And I don't know, I'm sure you remember that, in our medical school, we had this mortuary, the morgue, yeah, that was between the hospital and the boys' hostel. And every time I would go towards the boys' hostel, I would see somebody or the other being brought, some body brought there. And that was the only forensic department in the whole of the state, really, of Chhattisgarh. And so we would have all of these people from all over the villages and all being brought. And if you remember, the cafeteria was right across
Yeah, yeah,
the morgue, yeah.
I remember.
And yeah, every time we would be drinking a cup of coffee or tea or something like that, we would be seeing bodies being brought. And I would see this time and again. And over time, really, I don't know what really happened. And every time I would see this a body being brought, I would say maybe it will be my family member next, maybe it will be me next. And there was a time when it was almost like a morbid fear, very crippling actually for me. And I realized very quickly that I have to do something to process this fear. And I don't know, maybe others haven't experienced that in their lives, but I did it at a very early age. And that was one of the big factors that kind of led me to this soul searching. And then I was introduced to Brahma Kumaris and you too at that time. And then the journey began. We started to understand all the all the beautiful things that Raj Yoga meditation teaches us, as taught by the Brahma Kumaris, and all of this began to become very clear. And
Yeah,
so, yes,
I
so
agree that
yeah.
I agree that death is definitely, there is universal fear of death everywhere. People usually, in response to that, people actually perceive death in so many different ways. And they actually develop a defense mechanism to face death. Either they try to scurry away from talking about death, because I feel that many people have this belief that if they talk about death, then they actually invite death, and that's why they don't want to talk about death. And also some people, they believe that death is natural, so it is not a big deal, so when it will come, they will be able to deal with it. So people have different perception towards death. And I feel that the main cause why there is so much fear of death is because of lack of understanding of really what death is all about.
True,
What do
true.
you think about it?
No, true. I think any time when there is fear, there is the cause of it is ignorance. Somebody is afraid of snakes is because they don't know how snakes behave. If there are people who really know how snakes behave, then they're not afraid of snakes or anything else. So if we begin to understand that, then we will be free from the fear of death. And that's what has happened over these many years. Is I have tried to dig into Raj Yoga meditation quite a bit, trying to experiment with a lot of different things and research extensively in these past several years. And now, not only do I not fear death, but while it might sound strange to people, but I have reached a stage where I look forward to it.
That's so interesting. And I remember that you talk about different types of fear of death. I think you have categorized them beautifully. So can you share that with us?
Sure, sure. And really speaking, there are five types of fear of death that I have experienced. And then when I was presenting last time about this, there was somebody in the audience who said one more type of death, and so I've added it. And so, really, there are six types of fear of death that I can share with all of you. So the first is, which I experienced, was the fear of my loved ones dying and I'll be left behind, and what will happen to me if my parents, my sister, and other people that I am so fond of, who take care of me, if they die, I'll be left alone. The second type of fear is, what if I die and my loved ones will be left behind? And I won't be able to take care of them. I won't be able to do what I need to do for them. The third type is that I experience, again, all of these I'm telling you was a lot of internal work on trying to understand what fear I'm going through. Was to, at that time, reading all these scriptures and knowing all this, so many things, so much information that's out there, that sometimes people say that you could be born as an animal, you could be born as a bird, as an insect, and all of those things. So that was another fear. What will happen after death? Will I go into oblivion? Will I be born as an animal, as an insect? And then the other fear was, what will actually happen during death? Will there be pain? Will there be suffering? Will there be like some sort of pull push? What will happen at that moment? And these are the four main. And then there was one more that I wanted to achieve a lot. I wanted to grow up and do things so that I can then be of service to others. I could be of service to my parents, and so on and so forth. And I didn't want to die too early. The fear of dying before I've achieved anything worthwhile in my life. And then the sixth one was, which somebody had mentioned, that in current times is very relevant, the fear of dying alone. Because a lot of people, when they are suffering from COVID, they don't get an opportunity to have their family members around them. So, really speaking, these five or six types of fear, and this is a very short session, but hopefully in our conversation together, Kanishta, we can then see how, or we can present for others how, through the practice of Raj Yoga, we were able to, me and of course you too, at the same time, were able to kind of fix these fears, if you will, right?
Yeah, and I feel that most important thing that I really understood when I came to Raj Yoga meditation is that that we say that we all are human beings, but really speaking, we identify ourselves with the human part and we forget the being, and we talk about the being, the soul, only when somebody dies. But if we continue to practice that we are beings living in the physical body, and we are not just humans but beings, spiritual beings, then this fear of death will go away.
Yeah, that's
Because
true. That's true.
yeah, because the most important thing that we understand in Raj Yoga meditation practice is that the being that we are, it never dies. It's always there. We are all immortal beings. We are indestructible beings. So if we are never going to die, then why there's this fear? Just have to.
Truly, I agree with you. And that's why I like to say that death is the ultimate truth, but also the ultimate lie. Because if we see ourselves as bodies, and which the current paradigm of the world is stuck in, and that we consider death as this biological death where the body dies, and that's why we call it as a mortal coil too. And that will happen. This body will wither away, will disintegrate eventually. And so that has to happen. And the more we identify ourselves with this body, the more death becomes a reality, becomes a truth. However, the more we identify ourselves as a soul, the life form, the energy, which is indestructible, which is immortal, which is eternal, which is just energy. And energy truly can't be destroyed. We know it through physics. It can go from one body to the other. Yeah, it can go from one lifetime to the other, but it never ceases to die. It's to live. It never dies.
Yeah, it's like exiting exiting old home and going to a new home. So it's like a happy moment right there. It's not something to really afraid of.
Yeah,
So that is very interesting how we can see our how we can change our perception. When we start to meditate, our belief system changes, our perception changes, the way we see things around us changes. And the most important thing that you talked about, in the beginning, is our change in consciousness. The entire consciousness changes. So I think when the entire consciousness changes, then this fear also goes away very easily.
right. And like I said, see, it's not just fear for our death, fear for other people's death too. So when you understand that you are a soul, you are a life energy, not this body, you also begin to understand others are souls too. And so you begin to see them as souls. So you begin to understand then that they also are eternal. They are immortal beings. They're indestructible, imperishable, how whatever fancy word you want to use, but they cannot die either. They can leave their current mortal coil and go and take another one, which is perfectly fine, but they can never die.
Yeah, it's just like changing costume. You shed your old costume and you take a new costume. So that's just a change
Yeah,
of dress and nothing else. But the life is
right,
going to be continued. Life is not going to end. And I like the way one time I think you said that death is just like putting a period, like it's pause. It's a moment when that shift is happening. So it's really beautiful moment right there when you are
right.
just changing.
Right. See, I like to see death as a punctuation. Yeah, and punctuation mark. And so punctuations bring meaning to the sentence. You think of somebody is writing sentences after sentences without any punctuation. You can't really decipher any meaning out of those sentences. So, in other words, punctuation brings meaning to the sentence. Similarly, death brings meaning to life.
Yeah, that's so
If there
beautiful.
is no death, then there will be no meaning and no purpose for life itself. Yeah,
Yeah.
and in a way, going back to what I had said earlier, it is the ultimate truth and the ultimate lie, depending on how you perceive it. And this, for some, it might seem like a paradox, but life is a marriage of paradoxes. I always like to see it that way, and I feel more fascinated by how life evolves around paradoxes. And so, again, just understanding this concept is so paramount, so fundamental. And that is, I guess, the most fundamental teaching of Raj Yoga meditation, that I am a life force, I am an energy, I am a soul, I am indestructible, and so is every single human being on this planet Earth.
Yeah, and also that soul is like a seed. Just like, from an apple seed, you get apple fruit. Similarly, human seed, human seed is like, human soul is going to take a human body. It's not going
Right.
to go in a dog's body or a cat's body. So that is another understanding that we really, got to understand when we came to Brahma Kumaris, that we are not going to go in any other animal body, but we are going to get a human body. So that also gives you respite, that that it's not that where you're going to go. It's not like that. That you're definitely, I'm going to go in a new body, in a new human body.
Yes, thank you for saying that. I agree with you. And in fact, now we have known from so many past life experiences, past life regression, and studies that there is not a single incident where anybody has shared that they were a golden retriever in their previous lifetime. Or a cow that gave milk, or an elephant that gave rights to people. No, not a single incident. They were all human experiences of past lives. And so that was a true respite too for me at that time. I didn't know about the scientific aspect of all this, but at that time when I heard this, wow, that was a lot of good feeling at that moment, that yes, I won't be turned into an insect or a snake or a scorpion. I'll become a human, yeah, in my next lifetime too. Yes.
Yeah, so another thing that's very important that I learned in Rajuga meditation is practice of detachment. Because the cause of fear of death is that we are too attached to so many different things of this physical world. And when we learn how to detach ourselves from the physicality of this world, then it becomes easy for us to experience that moment of death. So what do you
Right.
think about that? How did you practice that detachment? How
So,
do you
yeah, before I go into real detachment aspect, which is not very easy pill to swallow for many, I wanted to talk a little bit about the cyclical nature of human existence, and that was also a big respite, in this whole understanding that we in the West and really all the Western philosophies have now entered into even the East, right? Along with KFCs and McDonald's, right? So everywhere we think the same thing as the West. And so what has now transpired in people's minds is that they feel that life is linear, starting from birth to death, and they have to cram up all of these things, achieve more, acquire more, do more, be more, so on and so forth. And death seems like a culmination, and therefore seems like a failure, and that after death all this is going to go away, nothing will be left. Yeah, however, if you understand from the true Eastern philosophy and Brahma Kumari's Rajayoga meditation point of view, the body of knowledge that comes along with the meditation, what we understood that life is cyclical. So when we die, the soul then goes into a new child. And so just like, no, when you talk about cyclical, it kind of reminds me, or when I think about cyclical, it reminds me of the analog clock. So you go from 12 through 3, 6, 9, 12, and then again 3, 6, 9, 12. So what what we are not able to achieve in a particular day, we achieve it in the next day, right? We put it aside for the next day. What we are not able to achieve in 1 month, we set it aside for the next month. Some of us are not able to, and that's why there is stress, right? I got to do it today, no matter what. Yeah, I was like that. You remember? Like, I can't let the sun set on this. I got to do it today. But then it creates so much of stress. So now, thankfully, I've kind of become better, and I let it be okay tomorrow, maybe day after tomorrow. Huh? And so what we can't achieve in this year in 2020 we can achieve in 2021 and 2022 and so on and so forth. Similarly, what we have not achieved in this lifetime we can achieve in the next one.
Yeah, and I
This
think
is the
that was
beauty.
yeah, I think that was one of the fears that you had described before, that there is fear of not accomplishing anything in this life. So that is also one of the fears people
Right.
have. But if they have this understanding that life is cyclical, I'm going to whatever I have not achieved in this lifetime. Yes, I did my best, I tried, but if I didn't get, then I can get it, in my next life. So why
it's
worry
like
about?
it's like letting the ball roll. You've started the ball to roll, and it will continue to roll as you go into the next lifetime. But going back to that aspect of feeling inadequate, that I want to achieve more, and I haven't achieved enough. It's not just for the younger lot. I've realized this over time as I've presented this kind of this topic to larger audiences, that people at all ages feel that I can achieve more, or I could have, I don't know, bought more commodities, or more cars, more houses, or gone more places, met more people, done this more, that more. So people, are not able to experience contentment with what they're doing. And a lot of it is because people are not living. Now, I myself, I found that I wasn't living in the moment. I wasn't living a life of purpose, a life where meaning becomes an important is the most important driving force. And so when we live aimlessly, if you will, mindlessly, if you will, then this whole experience of, oh, I haven't achieved enough, becomes very big and real. So if I can go back to this state of being totally present in the moment, doing the best I can, and that's why I always keep saying that, and I've found it for myself that, it's like death. Um, like again, going back to that fear of how I will die or how we will die, depends really on how we are living.
Yeah, it is said that if you live fully, then you really you by when you died at that time also you are kind of very contented that I lived my life fully.
Exactly. So living my life fully would also now maybe take us into the law of karma, right? What do you think? That if I do the right actions, if
Right.
I, yeah, be a good person, truly good person, and truly good person is when I align myself through the to the true core of my being. We are usually misaligned, by various degrees, sometimes even 180 degrees. Yeah, and so there is a lot of internal unease, and therefore dis-ease in the body too. And we are not able to be creative, we are not able to live effectively, have good relationships with people. But if I'm more and more aligned to the true existence, true core of my being, then I'll be able to do the highest actions in the
Yeah.
most meaningful way, most productive way, most effective way. I'll be able to live fully, completely, wholly. So any moment can be the last moment, and I will be okay, right? Or we will be okay.
Right. And one of the practices that we do here is a practice of soul consciousness, that we try to remember who we are. And in that consciousness, when we do any task, we kind of bring those divine qualities that are in that being. So that really helps us to act in a very beautiful way. Whatever actions we perform, our actions, they have their quality actions. They are not like normal ordinary actions, but those actions, they are kind of they have good quality, so we feel good about it because
Right.
we are performing good actions. So there is that contentment will come automatically.
Right, right. And so here, would you like to also talk about connection with the highest energy that helps us cultivate all those divine qualities within us? So
Yeah.
again, then our actions become more meaningful. And
Right.
you have really forged a very deep connection with the highest energy, God, if you will,
Yeah, I
right? If you
remember.
want to share something.
Right. That connection is so important, connection with the divine energy. Because I remember when I lost my father, at that time, I did not have this connection. I didn't know how to make this connection with the divine. And I was missing, my father's love a lot. So I was kind of devastated at that time because I
I
had no
know.
understanding, of who God is and what soul is. And I had no idea at all. But then later on, when I came into Raj Yoga meditation practice, then I realized that, this connection, if I make the connection with the divine energy, then whatever the soul is looking for, the soul is actually, the soul becomes full with everything. Because making that connection, it is as if, you got a key, you just that you apply that key and the treasure store is kind of open for you.
Right,
You fill yourself with peace, love, happiness, everything, whatever you want in life, you get that from that divine source.
right,
So that experience when you get, then you are kind of full, you are also, you feel yourself to be very protected, because that relationship of father and child gives you that experience of protection. So the fear of death then automatically goes away.
right. And I like how you said about relationship, because this forging of this living relationship with God, if I, and it's not just father child, right? It can be n number of relationships. It could be brother sister, it could be mother child, it could be spouse, it could be anything, right? A friend, a companion. And that's what I felt, that, and that eternal source of energy is truly eternal. It's immortal, doesn't even have a mortal coil that that he'll have to leave. And so if I am creating a living relationship with God in so many different ways, then I know that I will always have that relationship. I will never be devoid of that relationship, if you will, or I'll never um, not have that relationship, for a lack of better word, or better words for it. Right?
Yeah, that's
That's
so.
what you feel too.
Yeah, I felt that, and I also remember that. I think when your mother was going through, when she was facing cancer, how beautifully you prepared her for leaving the body. So, would you like to describe that a little bit?
Sure, sure. I just want to make sure how much time we have. Yeah, we should finish soon because we have Sister Kala with us and we would love to hear from her and she can guide us through the meditation experience. But before we go on to that, I just wanted to say that I know this is a very short session, but I wanted to give you a taste of all of these different aspects. But also, there is so much to understand now from research in outer body experiences, near death experiences, end of life experiences, if you will, and the understanding of how many different types of deaths there are. And, there's just so much to know about it and so much to understand. And the more you understand, the more comfortable you start becoming. And one of the things that I always was fascinated was, this word called as samadhi. I'm sure some of you have known this. It's a Sanskrit word, where these really renowned ascetics, or people who have really experienced the true state of being, if you will, are able to invoke their own death at the time when they think it is the right time for them. So they have lived so meaningfully, they would come onto into the mortal coil, do what needs to be done. After they're done doing that, now is the time for me to go. Yeah, and then they leave. And so on one hand, this intense fear of death, right, for some people. Two, on the other hand, where you kind of not only look forward to it like I do, yeah, but you're ready to celebrate death, but also in a way to take it to the point where you can invoke your own death after you have lived so meaningfully, that you have done all that you were supposed to do in this lifetime. Yeah, isn't that interesting? So this is what I feel. And so for my mom too, that's what happened is when she was diagnosed with cancer, and it was extremely advanced. We knew that it was not going to, be cured because it was stage 4. It had spread to pretty much every organ of the body. And so I started preparing my mom. And it was interesting how initially there was a lot of resistance from my mom. And she felt, why was I talking about this? So on one hand, I gave her love and compassion and a lot of care. But on the other hand, I prepared her. I kept talking to her about this understanding that I had gotten from Raj Yoga meditation, that we are souls and that you can leave this physical body, yeah, soon or whenever it is the right time, but you will never die and you will go on to a fresh new body. And so this is the time for you to really figure out how you can live so meaningfully in such a detached way, letting go of all the past that you have been holding on to, all the baggages that you've been holding on to, and then live in the moment in the most purposeful, most meaningful way, do the highest actions, and that will translate into a beautiful death. And truly speaking, she died like a saint. You were there, I was there, holding her hand as she left her body, as she took her last breath, and truly with no pain, such a beautiful, such a silent death that she experienced. And after that, thanks to all the help that I got from the meditation center, the Brahma Kumaris meditation center in Bhopal in
Yeah, I
India,
remember there was
we
a grand ceremony that happened. It was like celebration of her death rather than, grieving her death.
exactly. And I didn't want to. And when people came and they started crying, I said, no, don't cry. We don't. We need to be happy. This is a time of rejoice. This is a time of celebration of a beautiful life that was led by a person who taught me so much, and also served people around in so many different ways. And now we're going to make this into a grand ceremony, and we booked a big marriage hall. We had all these invitation cards distributed. We had food prepared for almost 500, 600 people, right? And the center sister came and gave a very nice talk about this aspect about soul, and so on and so forth. And there was dance and there was singing, and it was such a beautiful celebration. And so I just want to say that I hope now we're going to end our conversation, me and Kanishta's conversation, and hand it over to to Sister Kala, Dr. Kala. But I just hope that in this short conversation that we had, short presentation that we did, we have hopefully been able to allay some of your fear of death. Yeah, and hopefully have been able to take you to a point where you can look forward to how beautiful death can be for all of us, with a little bit of curiosity, little bit of humor, and lots of good feelings about death, rather than cursing it, hoping it will never happen, and so on and so forth. Om Shanti, and thank you.
Wow. Thank you, Dr. Shvetank and Kanishta. You've started us on something that I don't think we can stop now. You've just, got the juices going. And I see there's a lot of comments and maybe even questions. Can you take a question or so?
Sure, Dr. Kala, happy
Yeah,
to.
I think somebody's asking, what should we say to people who are worried about leaving their loved ones?
Dr. Kala, I would love to have you answer that, because you have such profound practice for the past 40, 45 years, and I look forward to hearing from you. I know I've already presented, and I look forward to hearing what you would say about this.
Right. This is such a deep subject. I don't think it's a 2-minute answer, isn't it? In fact, like I said, you embarked on such a thing that's going to take a few turns, I think. But also, similar to what you've been sharing, this whole thing of what we call love between people, person to person, human to human. Um, Again, we know it's based on this identity of the body, right? And so obviously we are attached to the body, and therefore there's a fear of loss of the body, or loss of the person, but really not recognizing that the connection that we've made as soul to soul is always going to be there, right? And so, what I would say to the person who is worried about this is to try and really reinforce that soul to soul connection on a day to day basis. On a day to day basis, like we talked a little bit about how we can be soul conscious. Through my own practice, I can reinforce this consciousness that I am a soul. But in the same way, too, the other person is a soul too. Eternal entity is also full of beautiful qualities, timeless in nature. And so we are here to share from our qualities, express our qualities, and of course, live together. That's our beautiful part in the drama. And so let's make the best of it, so that we will have some not only beautiful memories to take, but we will also have beautiful assets with us that we have shared with each other. So soul to soul connection, which makes it even more important for me to practice soul consciousness, because if I can't be in that consciousness of soul, I cannot look at the other person as a soul either. the first thing I have to do is to stabilize in my awareness of the soul. Right? I don't know if that answers your question. Yes, Iris. Very good. And of course, we cannot but remember our Dadi Janki, who recently left us at 104. And she left the way she wanted to leave. 104. She wanted to be in the body until she could be of service to people, and she lasted that. And then she left, and she had particularly said, I don't want anybody coming to my funeral from all over the world. And the time she left was the time we started the lockdown, so nobody could travel. So there she left, and otherwise we would have all gathered around and attended her funeral, and she wanted nothing of that sort. So I'm just making light of this matter, but it's true that whatever we intend for ourselves is what we ordain for ourselves also. Of course we have to work towards it, but I think it's a lot in our hands. And so you've given us some beautiful thoughts to think about, reflect on. And so in the next few minutes that we have, perhaps we can take some time to reflect further individually, personally, and reflect not so much on death, but reflect on life. The life that I'm living. Because as I live, so I will die. Again, Dadi Janki's words. I know how to live. I know how to die. Even in this moment, becoming still, becoming aware, am I fully present to what's in front of me, what's around me, and present even to my own self, true self. Acknowledging that life force in this body, that's giving life to each and every cell. That's eternal. Not limited by time or space. But is able to have an experience regardless of that time and space, regardless of the matter and the changes in the matter. Feel that life force vibrating in the center of the forehead. and sending out waves and waves of beautiful living energy in the form of peace, in the form of love, in the form of joy. And this body in which I live temporarily is the first one to receive these waves. Making the body calm, relaxed, and allowing for any healing to take place. Soul and body coming together in a beautiful marriage. That's what this life is all about. And when this body has done its work, my part changes and I move on. I move on. I don't move back. I move on. To live, to accomplish, to share, and to really honor the Creator in the best way I can. Life is beautiful and eternal. Let's practice this again and again, day in and day out. So this becomes my reality. Life is my reality. And so-called death is just a byproduct. And we can be ready for it ahead of time. Om Shanti.
Om Shanti. Thank you, Dr. Kala. Thank you, Dr. Shvetank and Dr. Kanishta, for a beautiful presentation, conversation. It really clarified so many doubts that we had, so many questions that we had. And so it's time. So good night, everybody. And we'll see everyone next week at 8 p.m. Feel Well, Heal Well Meditation Lounge. And have a great week ahead. Thank you and Om Shanti.